But most important is the personality upon whom the Baal Shem Tov focuses all his intercessionary efforts, the Messiah. The Baal Shem Tov enters the palace of the Messiah and finds the latter studying Torah. He asks the Messiah, when is he coming? A question laden with pathos, and is told when the Baal Shem Tov's teachings will be spread throughout the world, and when what the Messiah had taught the Baal Shem Tov, presumably in a previous encounter, will be learned by others. Suddenly, the unprecedented joy is dissipated, and a sense of brooding sadness sets in. Nevertheless, the Baal Shem Tov relates that he learned 3 segulot, generally remedies or occult techniques for assisting the distressed, and 3 holy names, which, however, he is not permitted to reveal to Reb Gershon. It is this brief passage which has so tantalized the historians. Why the Messiah, and what kind of Torah was the Messiah studying? What was the mysterious teaching that the Messiah transmitted to the Baal Shem Tov supposed to accomplish? Answers to these questions cover the full range of opinion on the role of Messianism in primitive Hasidism. Dinur, following Horodetsky, but in much greater detail, sees in these lines a confirmation of his thesis that Hasidism continues unabated in the messianic momentum of Lurianic Kabbalah that has led to such convulsive results in the Sabbatean heresy. The Torah studied and taught by the Messiah in the Baal Shem Tov vision is Torah HaGeulah, the teaching of redemption, the national liberation by the Messiah. At the other end of the spectrum, Dubno reads this passage as proof that the personal salvation has displaced national redemption for Hasidism. It is for this reason that he dubs the letter a manifesto of Hasidism, quite ignoring the pertinent fact that a personal letter to a relative not intended for publication can hardly be considered a manifesto. Tishby quite rightly fails to find any such radical substitutions for personal and national redemption in this brief passage, but in opposition to Dinur, Tishby holds that it can tell us nothing about the role of Messianism in Hasidism after the Baal Shem Tov, for what we have here is the last manifestation of the Kabbalistic effort to accelerate the coming of the Messiah by means of sacred magic, holy names, and the like. Sholem sees in this letter additional evidence for Hasidism's neutralization of the messianic element. The Baal Shem Tov's sadness at the length of time it will take the Messiah to come, although the Messiah has no set date, stipulating only that it would depend on the success of the Hasidic movement. In itself sufficient proof that the explosive Messianism is no longer a real element in the Bechtian view, but that neither has Messianism has as such been abandoned. The Baal Shem Tov's belief that in the eventual messianic redemption is no different from that which prevails in normative traditional Judaism. An unprejudiced reading of the letter fails to yield any high-changed attempt to precipitate the messianic redemption. The answer Messiah gives is not substantially different from the classical formula that redemption depends on repentance and good deeds, except that it is here receives Hasidic reformulation. The dialogue between the two is decidedly non-eschatological. Indeed, what emerges is the figure of Messiah as simply the most appropriate historic or meta-historic personality, whom the pneumatic can choose to invoke as a possible source of assistance in seeking to intercede with God on behalf of persecuted Israel. It might just as well have been any one of a number of other traditional personalities of whom Jewish visionaries discourse with: Elijah, Moses, Jacob, among others. Messiah, as the one destined to usher in the final redemption, is an obviously appropriate accomplice in any effort to relieve Jewish suffering. But the Baal Shem Tov learns, to his great displeasure, that the Messiah's activity is limited to that ultimate redemption, which is still far off. And if he wants to accomplish something now, he must look elsewhere. The mystical techniques he learns appease him, but he does not at all say that these were taught to him by the Messiah. On the contrary, the context, though the style is somewhat rambling, will lead us to think otherwise. So certain is the Baal Shem Tov that the Messiah cannot help in the present predicament. He undertakes direct confrontation with the personification of evil itself, the Samach Mem. It is therefore not Messianism that stamps this letter as an important religious document, but rather the incessant and spiritually heroic efforts of the founder of Hasidism to nullify the accusations, the act as the defender of his people. This activity, which was assumed by the successors of the Besh, notably Reb Dov Ber, the great Maggid, is known in Hasidic thought as Hamtakas Hadinim, the sweetening of the judgment. Interestingly, as Rubinstein has pointed out, the two visions recorded in this letter take place on Rosh Hashanah, when judgment is the theme of the day. In a parallel report in Shivchei HaBesht, the ecstatic vision and attempted intercession takes place on the eve and the day of Yom Kippur, culminating in the Ne'ilah service climax of the day. In a report of Yaakov Yosef, at the very end of his Toldot Yaakov Yosef, we read that in an ascent of the soul, the Baal Shem Tov saw Michael, the guardian archangel of Israel, defending the people against the diabolical accusers. It is thus Hamtakas Hadinim that seems to be the purpose not only of the visions recorded in this letter, but of all the Beshtian ascents of the soul. Conversely, Hamtakas Hadinim in pneumatic activity performed during the high ecstasy of Dveikus by means of a sense of the soul of the tzaddik.